Hello, welcome to episode 39 of Scuttlebutt, a Marine Corps Association podcast. Today, Vic sits down with Aeron Sullivan, who spent 8 years in the Marine Corps and then converted his experience he gained into successful business ventures left, right, and center. And this kind of continues an unofficial series we've been running here where Vic's been talking to entrepreneurs out in California. So if you've been tuning in, hopefully you've been inspired to go out and start your own business or get involved or invest or do something, but make it happen. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Hi, hey everyone. This is Vic, and I know I say this every time, but I only say it because it's true. I am truly honored and kind of geeking out a little bit here. I'm here with former Marine Aeron Sullivan. You've got a truly fascinating story, and I definitely want to dive into it. But just to sort of hit some of the wave tops, former Marine, Amtracker, yes.
We have that in common.
We have that in common. I mean, our ships passed in the night on multiple occasions.
That's true.
Which we'll delve into. You were AVTB.
Mm-hmm.
Got a taste for the amphibious vehicle test branch and sort of the business side of the military.
Yep.
Then you went into a startup.
Mm-hmm.
Then you went into another startup, and now you're currently in another startup.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think definitely a prevailing theme here is going to be transition. But almost every aspect of your life has been transformative. And so I'm so honored, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here in your home and to sit down and talk to you, man. So Aeron, welcome, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for inviting me to be on your podcast.
Yeah, no, this is so great. And so, so let's just dive in.
Sure.
So you are in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I grew up there.
You're
Yeah.
a young man in Arizona, and the bugle calls. Is that what was your path to the Yellow Footprints?
Yeah. So I grew up in Arizona, and it was interesting. I don't even recall exactly why, but when I was in high school, I had aspirations to join the Marine Corps. And I remember talking to a recruiter a couple times, and I was like, well, I want to do college first. How does that work? And he's like, yeah, just do it after.
Yeah. Weird. I've never heard of a recruiter say that.
Yeah. He's like, I need to hit my quarterly numbers. So I abandoned it at that point and wanted to go to college. And this is a long story, but I had a friend who, in the early days, we play Call of Duty now, but way back when it was Ghost Recon.
I remember Ghost Recon.
You do? Okay.
Totally.
Well, so funny story. I played competitively, and it was like legit. I legit was number one in the world.
Get out of town.
Yeah.
Dude, how is that not in my research?
Well, it's not something you advertise on LinkedIn, right?
The only time that I was number one in Ghost Recon, it was when Ghost Recon Las Vegas came out.
Oh.
And me and my buddy got probably more beer than our livers wanted us to get. And then we just spent a 72 playing
Ghost Recon in
Las Vegas.
That actually sounds like a lot of fun. So I was on this team, and I had a buddy who was, 19, and he's like, oh, you should apply to this school in Missouri. And I'm like, why would I go to this school in Missouri? But I applied nonetheless, and they didn't have any students from Arizona. And I think so on all of their marketing material, they could say, well, we have students from 17 states instead of 16.
Yeah.
And so they give me a much more generous scholarship than my grades sort of warranted, right? Because I spent all my time playing Ghost Recon. But anyhow, I get into college, study abroad in Europe, grew to really appreciate what America sort of afforded us in opportunity, and kind of that desire to serve came back to my life. So I believe I was a sophomore. No, I was a junior in college. Went to OCS between my junior and senior year.
PLC, right? Yeah, between leaders course.
I guess. Yeah. So we go. I go to that. It's 10 weeks. Make it through. Go back to school for a year.
Yep.
And then eventually got commissioned. I was intending to be a lawyer, but and we could talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, ultimately ended up joining the officer corps.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so then obviously you're spending time in Virginia.
Yeah.
TBS,
At Quantico. Yeah.
And then selection comes up, and is it you just Amtrak's was the thing? Because it's very few slots, man, out of TBS.
There was two slots. So I remember there was a number of cats that wanted to get Amtrak's, and but I had Amtrak's number 1 and infantry number 2.
Yeah.
And I remember the cadre appreciating the fact that infantry was really high, because a number of people were like, "I'll do Amtrak's, but infantry is down," and like, and they're like, but they're joined at the hip. And so I remember, I think I was ranked. The funny story, I was ranked pretty high because I was really good at the field exercises.
Yeah.
I think because I had logged like 20,000 hours at Ghost Recon.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Hey, which is a huge shout out for wargaming.
It is true.
Yeah.
It is true. I remember being like, dude, the people in real life do the same thing in the video game. We just run out of breath, you know?
Yeah, it gets the stuff is a lot heavier.
Yes, yeah, stuff's a lot heavier and I'm a lot slower. But no, I was ranked pretty high, but still there was a few people that wanted it in front of me. But they were like, no, like, if you're not willing to go to the front line, then I don't want to give you a front line sort of MOS. And so I ended up getting Amtrak's. Funny enough, the other guy in my class that got Amtrak's was Michael McGuire, who works with me in my current startup now.
No way.
Yeah, true story. So anyhow, yeah, I got tracks. He as well. Since I was ahead of him, I got the West Coast. He got the East Coast, as you know how it goes.
Yeah. Which. Yeah. Nothing against
no, not at all.
Courthouse Bay is amazing.
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
It's not.
It's not Camp Pendleton. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that's really so. Very similarly, I was infantry all the way through, and then Colonel Mullins, not Colonel Mullins, but then Captain Mullins gave us this. Brief on what Amtrackers, what the AAV community was, and they showed this video of the Amtrak and AVTB trying to write it, trying to roll it, continuously writing itself.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dude, I can surf in the Marine Corps. Like,
right.
So when I switched it, same sort of thing was that, but I wasn't ranked. I mean, equality thirds being what they were, it's good to be the top of the bottom.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I remember my SBC saying like, "You're not going to go grunts." He was a grunt, right?
Yeah, right.
But I will let you go Amtrak.
That's
sounds
funny.
good to me. You are good in the field.
That's hilarious.
So that's so cool. So then you end up at Camp Pendleton.
Yep.
Your first company is?
I got put with Jason Philos and Charlie Company at Third Tracks. Yeah.
Which was just about 6 months prior was Vic Ruble's
which
company.
is yes.
He went and did amazing things. You can read all about it.
That's
the book is in process.
The book's in writing. Okay.
It's in the editing process now. But so it's so cool. So you're a Charlie Company guy. I'm a Charlie Company guy.
Yeah. And
all right. So then you do your thing. You end up then at ABTB.
Yeah. So let's see. I was at Third Track, spent some time with Charlie Company, spent some time, you don't get your double stripes until you spent some time in H&S Company.
Yeah,
right? So I did my time in H&S Company, went out with the 15th MU with 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, came back, actually got, so funny, I was actually going to go be the captain at the Silent Drill Team. And they had just come out with this education, exchange program with the other branches of the service.
Interesting.
And so I actually was one of 11 Marines that got sent to Fort Benning, Georgia, to go to Maneuver Captain's Career Course with all of the Army captains.
And I went to Advanced Armor when it was at Knox.
Oh, so it was same
rolled up.
Yes.
So
it's cool. The same program.
Yeah,
they ended up calling it MCC.
Yeah.
But it was so funny because it was such a high directive. It superseded all previous orders for those 11 Marines. So I ended up there, which actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise because that was only 6 months long. I would have been in DC for years. And AVTB, it's kind of the OPSO, but they call him the Test Management Officer. That billet opened up at AVTB under, at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Bailey and, funny enough, Major Philos, Philos. And so went out there and got exposed to the business side of the armed forces.
And that was foundational for you then, to see different, more than just like tactics and hammerhead lefts and rights.
For
now
sure.
You're looking at the
Acquisitions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Acquisitions.
Yeah. You know, I when I was in college, I studied political science. I mean, like, what do you do with political science? You join the Marine Corps is what you do.
Right. The cheap man's history.
Exactly. And I wasn't interested in business at all. For some reason, I had this image of business being boring. And I'm like, oh, business is war. Like, it's, you know, when you get into it, it's super interesting. Just feel that the role of money earning and commerce plays in life in every facet. So I get to AVTV and I get exposed to this the business side of the house. I had more civilian engineers that reported to me than Marines. And so we're dealing with these large scale contracts with sort of the military industry. And I just found it absolutely fascinating and sort of fell in love with business at AVTV. I got my MBA there, PMP, and just really started to appreciate what the role of money and commerce played, not just in the public sphere with like military, but just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for those listeners who aren't aware, so we're talking about AVTBs, the Amphibious Vehicle Test Branch. And so when, especially in new systems such as the Amphibious Combat Vehicle,
Yep.
is coming online, we've got prototypes and we've got, fielding, and we've got to do all of these different things. So we spoke with Colonel Howe, who is the program manager for Advanced Amphibious Assault. And so when they have a program of record and it goes to the prototype and everything on paper looks good, Mackey gets their chance. The Marine Corps Operational Testing Branch gets a go at it.
Right.
You guys then are how does the Amphibious Vehicle Test Branch play into this acquisition cycle?
Well, we play at a number of different stages in the acquisition. So actually for the ACV, funny enough, now that I think back, there was a point where it was, I don't remember who won the contract, but at the time, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, BAE,
yeah.
and another one. SAIC.
Yeah.
We ran a competition across all 4 prototypes to see who would select. Well, I was the test management officer when we ran that prototype testing across all 4, and eventually led to the selection of 2 to head off, and then eventually.
Yeah, I think when we down selected, it was SAIC and BAE.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
So they down selected after I had left, but I was there.
It's so weird because we didn't, in all of our pre-show stuff, I was the requirements guy.
Were you really?
For the AC.
No kidding.
Yes.
I remember reading them.
I remember we down selected to those 2 platforms. Yeah. And SAIC had actually had the AAV survivability upgrade.
Oh, yes.
It was definitely, and so SAIC was also playing in the ACV game too. So
yeah, that's interesting. Well, and it was funny too, because I remember running tests on the final EFV test before the program was totally sunset. You know? But anyhow, yeah, so that's an example of the Defense Department is helping to drive requirements and is really trying to hedge some of their risk on picking the wrong, contractor to develop this new warfare system. So we're there at that stage. At the same time, we also had things like, I think it's called the MLP Marine Landing Platform. It's like a kind of a semi-ship to shore, large platform deck. It's not going to take you across the ocean, but it can move large pieces of gear.
Right.
Well, they needed to validate that AEVs could launch off of these things. They've never launched off before. So I was the first vehicle off one of those in a test to expand the scope of capabilities of an existing system. And then typically for acceptance testing, if that thing is going to be deployed to the fleet and it happens to go ship to shore or shore to ship, that also needs to go through a test branch like AVTV. So we focused on those. So it could be in the beginning in prototype, prototype selection, all the way to expanding the requirements and capabilities of a particular platform that's in service, or acceptance testing at the end of the acquisition lifecycle before deployment to the fleet.
Yeah, dude. So it's all so cool. Yeah, because it was so great to get this perspective. Because, like I said, we've talked about like the acquisitions, like the pen to paper sort of processes, and we talked the operational testing. But now here's another agency, and just to give our listeners just this peace of mind, like when a piece of gear hits the fleet, man, it has been through the ringer.
It has indeed. Yeah. Sometimes so long, it's irrelevant by the time it gets there.
It's so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get it. So now you're cutting your teeth. You've gotten a business degree. You're seeing the business side of it, and so I'm getting the feeling based off of knowing your entire body of work that the seed bed has been planted now, and you've got sort of a taste for this sort of business, almost like a business startup.
Yeah. And ABT was interesting because we were one of the few profit drivers of the entire U.S. government, other than the IRS. Because if you have out of speculation, as a contractor, a military industry, you want to develop something, you can't just go test that anywhere. You have to go test it at a secure facility, especially if it's something that you'd consider classified or top secret. And so we got to actually drive revenue for the U.S. government in many cases where we're getting paid by private industry to use our facility. Mm-hmm. And we would advertise that to contractors. Hey, come here and test this thing out. We will help set up a test for you. Anyways, I found it really interesting. In 2013, 2014, I'd been at ABTB for 2 years, and partly for family reasons, felt like it was probably time to depart from the Marine Corps. Not for any lack of love for the Marines, just for my own family, felt like moving again was not going to be conducive to thriving with the family. And so I selected to leave after my 2-year obligation at ABTB. I was a captain at this point. And when I was looking to leave, I was looking at Intuit. They make QuickBooks and some other software. And I was talking to them about being a program manager for one of their software suites. And looking at software, and I guess the entrepreneurial bug kind of had bit me. And so as I was exiting the Marine Corps, I decided to start my first company.
So before we get into that, man, I got to just ask you, how many times in your life have you been told that you're crazy?
Yeah, I was told. I've heard from a couple battalion commanders, like, you're not my average Marine officer.
Yeah.
Which, not like I was like better or anything, just like I just kind of did things different.
Yeah. So when we think about outside the box thinking,
right,
I think Aeron Sullivan is like is on the forefront of everybody's mind here.
Yeah. When we actually, you can 120 millimeter mortar system. Mm-hmm. You can take them on tracks now. For if vertical lift isn't available, you can bring them. That was 15 from you. I was like, I can put those in the tracks. And ABTB eventually validated that, and we were the first MEU to use 120s on tracks.
Yeah.
And it's just, but it's that idea of like, why can't we?
Yeah.
You know.
And so, why can't we? That is a good, I think, entryway into trade div.
Mm-hmm.
And so, let's talk about why can't we, and the impetus behind. Well, this is what was trade div. Let's just talk. So your life. Let's just talk. You get out of the Marine Corps and then trade div. Is there an intermediary period?
No.
Or is it right in?
No, it was actually a little it was a little hairy. So if you recall, back in 2014, actually it was probably 2012, Colorado and Washington State were the first states to legalize recreational marijuana.
Yeah, and people's hair quite literally went on fire.
Yeah, people were like, they were nervous about this. Those laws took effect in 2014. And it's interesting how quickly this became normal. 75% of the states are now like medical or recreational use is legal. And probably by 2024, it's going to be all states. But that did not look the same way in 2012 through 2014. It was pretty taboo at that point still. At the time, in the Marines even, I was like, oh, there's probably a huge industry here. There's a huge opportunity. And I decided to basically start a company in that emerging space. We went from having something that was illegal to now a pharmaceutically regulated drug, and a huge opportunity to basically become the distribution backbone for something that was treated like wine by the consumer, but was regulated like a pharmaceutical. And so Treuting was a business to business e-commerce platform that sort of treated the the product like you would experience on Amazon or something like that for these distribution or retail storefronts. But on the backside of the platform, did all the things that would keep business owners out of jail by working with the state agencies, by tracking and tracing, by doing all these other sort of facets of the distribution of a pharmaceutical drug. And I remember having the idea while I was in the Marines and sort of working on it quietly, and really remembering that, my 8 years, including IRR, was up in August of 2016. And I made sure, I was like, we can't transact anything until September of 2016. I'm like, or 2015, excuse me. Because I'm just like, whether it's legal in Colorado or Washington, it's not legal to the U.S. Marine Corps.
Right. Yeah. You're still punishable under the UCMJ.
Absolutely.
That's no.
Yeah. So we really didn't, other than intent, there was never any. Yeah.
And so you guys ended up, you guys were called the Amazon of the legal marijuana distribution industry, and you were even featured in Inc. magazine's 30 Under 30.
Yeah, we blew up. We blew up. And it was we were at the very beginning. We saw the writing on the wall. There's probably interviews where we talked about what would happen, and what we said would happen has happened. It swept the country. Recreational medicals opened up. Look, governments want taxes, people want freedom. And so,
at one point, Colorado had so much excess revenue from this stuff that they were in a surplus of funds.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
That was only within a couple of years of it going legal. Right?
That's right. And so we were at the very beginning. We were really the first digital distribution platform for that industry. And so we grew very fast. And Inc. magazine, Incorporated magazine, it's like Forbes for millennials.
Right.
They really, and I remember talking to the CEO of Inc. and she said, yeah, we debated back and forth as to whether or not we would feature a company in this industry. But it seems to be going that way. And we think what you're doing is really at the forefront of thinking. And so we raised $5 million within a year. It was very, very fast growing company.
Because even though it was legalized, the process was still very much in that illicit space, right?
It was it
was dangerous, even though it was legal, right?
We had a couple deals where we were moving a couple 100 pounds and being like, oh, this is still sketchy, like it shouldn't be. Right. So we called it kind of the gray market. It was a white market in the sense that it was fully transparent, but it didn't behave that way. It behaved like the black market. And a lot of the players were still coming from and sort of immigrating from the black market into this new legalized space. But it was still super sketchy. Yeah. I don't think it so much as now, because it's been 10 years since it was legalized. But back then,
like you said, the states that haven't legalized are in the minority.
That's right. They are. Yeah, they are.
Even DC.
Yeah, it's almost all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're at the forefront of that, and things are apparently they're going swimmingly.
That's what it looked like. Yeah.
And then you went through another massive transition in your life. Can we talk to that?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah. So it was, I'd left the Marines in 2015 formally, started this company, and really been running it for a year. Now, of course, the idea had been in sort of percolation mode for beyond this, but we'd been officially running for a year. And I had what I can only describe as a radical encounter with Jesus. I was with my wife and we'd gone on this trip and I had this crazy experience.
You guys were engaged at the time.
Yeah, we were engaged. Yeah, right. That's right. We were engaged at the time. We're in Alaska and I had this crazy encounter.
And so you mind rewinding? I'm sorry, but why Alaska?
I was born in Alaska.
Okay, there you go.
I was born in Alaska. I hadn't been back since I was 2, and I was exhausted from fundraising and from this company.
Because you are the face of Treuting.
I was the CEO and the founder. Yeah, I was the face, and so I was exhausted, and I think my wife was exhausted for me / with me because I'm not home. My fiance. So we go to Alaska to kind of just like, hey, no Wi-Fi connection, no cell. Like, let's just decompress for a week. It's like one of the few places in America you can go right now.
right.
Like, hey, there is no cell connection.
Right.
And so, yeah, we have this radical encounter. We can talk more about that if you think it's relevant. But basically, over the course of several months, culminating, no kidding, on July 4th of 2016, July 4th, I sort of give my life to Christ, and I go to Israel a week later and do like a week-long pilgrimage to kind of figure things out all on my own, just by myself. And I came back and told much of their, disappointment. I told my co-founders and my board that I really couldn't be behind what we were doing anymore. And at the time, like I have opinions now about marijuana and drugs in general, but at the time I wasn't trying to place some like big value judgment on marijuana. But look, we had a fiduciary duty to sell as much marijuana as possible to as many people as possible, right? Like that's our business. And I'm like, I just don't think that's what God has for me.
Yeah.
That's just not.
Isn't that the mission statement of The Wire, the movie? That's like their tagline.
That's their tagline. Absolutely. And so I just, I'm like, this is not the most beneficial thing I can do for humanity. And so I gave all of my stock back. I said, hey, look, I'm not running the company you invested in me to run. So here's my stock. And I was really secretly hoping that it would take some of the sting out of me leaving. Well, all your stock's worth 30% more than it was. Don't sue me.
And I guess to put it in layman's terms, this is LeBron James leaving the Cavs the first time. The first time.
I imagine that was a bigger deal than what I was doing, but
not for your investors.
Not for my investors. Yeah. But I'm tickled you even use that comparison.
If this were a video thing, I'd have you do the baby powder.
Yeah. Totally.
But this is a huge deal.
It was a big deal. Yeah. It rocked kind of the cannabis world at the time. It wasn't that big of a world, but this was there's not a soul in that industry at that time that doesn't know this story. Yeah.
Yeah, and for our listeners, Google it.
Yes, for sure. Just don't believe everything you read.
You're right, exactly. Yeah, take it all with a grain of salt, as we say, validate your sources. And so now you've gone from, what I'm only guessing is 7 figures-ish, to now what?
Professionally, I started driving Lyft.
Okay. That's a profession for sure.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was.
Got to see another aspect of the human experience.
I did indeed. It was really, really humbling. Actually, it was a great experience. Yeah.
And so, I love this story. To be quite honest with you, obviously, as you're in the trenches, it's probably not so
sure
awesome. But for our listeners, this is transition 101, man. You are boldly making decisions based off of your value system, and you're using sort of the foundations of your life and the foundations of the Marine Corps. So this has to be extremely scary, right? Let's talk a little. I know it's a very short period.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that?
I think, the Marines. I think for those that are transitioning, those that have transitioned, I would expect to agree with me. But I can't speak for the whole armed forces, but just speaking for the Marine Corps, it's one of those double-edged swords where some of what you've learned, how you behave, how you think, is incredibly beneficial and valuable. And there's others that rub a little bit. There's a friction between how sort of softer, gentler companies might operate.
Nice. Okay.
I think when I had started Treuting coming out of the Marines, I ran it the way you might expect a captain coming out of the Marine Corps to run it.
Yeah, you're the opso, man. Yeah.
For sure. Very decisive, very quick in our decision making. Commit to a course of action until the intelligence tells us that's the wrong course of action, and then pivot on a dime. And rough, cursing, gritty, working too hard, drinking,
mission.
Totally. That was if that's your mission, it's mission accomplishment. That's the goal. And you're like, well, look, missions will, there's a start to a mission and an end to a mission. And then you need to rest. In a business, there is no end of the mission, so to speak, right? You just keep going. And so I really did wore myself pretty ragged in that company. Although we accomplished a lot in a very, very short period of time. The level and speed.
You can't feed that beast.
No, it'll consume you. Yeah. And, but we did, we executed with excellence at a very high speed and pace, and which I still hold on to now, but there has to be a tactical patience sort of that you account for. But when I walked away from Treuting, I started reading the Bible for the first time and was thoroughly confused by the pages of that book.
Weird.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If you know the Bible, you're like, yeah, it is weird and confusing. And so in any case, I found these videos online that helped explain different books in the Bible and different aspects called the Bible Project. And I was sold, right? It was immersive, just like, oh my gosh, Leviticus all of a sudden makes sense, like how that book could make sense, right? And I legit just guessed at the email of the founder and sent him an email. And it was basically like, hey, I'm a former marijuana entrepreneur. So stop reading if you want to. But
Yeah, I was about to say. Like,
yeah.
Don't close this out yet.
Yeah. Here's some things I can do. I remember like a bullet list of like, here's 5 things I can do. And if you need that, like, I just feel like the Lord's leading me to email you. And I felt like an idiot because like within a couple of days, I didn't hear anything. And 3 weeks later, John Collins of the Bible Project emails me back. He's like, come up to Portland, let's talk. And, fast forward, they gave me a job. I was their first business hire, right? They had all animators, illustrators making these videos. I was their first business hire, really hired to help them sort of go to market. How do we take this idea and like make a business?
Yeah.
And it was at Bible Project where I really, because I wasn't setting the culture, I was inserting myself into a culture. That was the first time I encountered a lot of resistance to how I habitually operated, much of which was trained and encouraged in the Marine Corps.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is so fascinating. So you go from, a 7-figure lifestyle, driving Lyft, and then you just, through the power of Christ and this sort of another sort of tech startup, I guess, is that?
Yeah, it totally. No, it absolutely was.
It was startup by a couple of Bible nerds.
It was a nonprofit religious education startup.
501(c)(3).
Yeah, it's a 501(c)(3). That's a tax ass business model. They were very much a startup. They wanted to grow. Yeah.
And you just guessed based off of an email that you had received. You just guessed at an email, and then you made it happen. We talked about this in the pre-show, man, and I think this is so great. I want our listeners to hear this, but I think there's a real lesson here. And regardless of the avenue, so I guess to juxtapose it. So my path was, and I was as transformed by the Bible Project as you were.
That's cool. Yeah. Small world.
Just unbelievably. But my thought when I was leaving graduate school was that I have to wait for an opportunity to present itself.
Right.
And so I'm going to be on all these subscription lists and email lists, and then there'll be a job opening. I'll look at all the job postings, and when I see one that fits me, I'll apply to that. And of course, nothing came up. You, on the other hand, decided I'm going to reach out and let God and let the winds of what they are take hold of what they will. And I just want to tease this out, and please feel free to cut me off on this long-winded diatribe, but there's such a lesson to be learned here that, like, sometimes, yes, there's the traditional model, and that is successful in a lot of ways, but when you're passionate about something, you need to go get it. Yeah. And you need to make the case that you're the right guy, vice waiting for the right thing to show up on your doorstep.
Yeah, I think it's look, if we're tying into Marine Corps leadership principles or characteristics, I think one of the characteristics we judge for in the fit rep is initiative.
Sure.
Right? I think one of the leadership principles is know yourself and seek self-improvement. And so I think, when if you're on the battlefield, you're looking for opportunities to exploit. That means you need to know your capabilities. It needs to mean you need to know your enemy, and you need to know the environment of the battlefield that you're on. I think in work, like if you were to lean into the skills and the talents and the techniques that you have cultivated in your time in the Marines, those come first in mind. You need to be self-aware of what you're good at. What are you uniquely gifted at? What is the thing that you do better than anybody else? It's not what you want to do better than anybody else. It's what you do better than anyone else. And that's just self-awareness, right? And I really think that's what that, know yourself, right? You need to know what you're good at. You need to know where your weaknesses are. And then you need to use initiative to go and seek out opportunities where you know you're a good fit. Because I truly believe that if you know what you're a good fit at, especially for our Marine officers graduating who have tangible leadership experience sort of under their belt, both managing budgets, equipment, and people, like you're a great asset to a lot of companies. Our staff and COs, you're a great asset and you have a lot of experience. Now, there's some cultural things that you're going to have to adjust to, but go seek out those opportunities and just simply present like, this is what I'm really good at. Do you have a need there? And, especially growing companies, they all have a shortage of good leadership. And so, yeah, rather than waiting to compete with the 200 applications, go find those opportunities before those jobs are ever posted.
For sure. I mean, it's such a great lesson. And obviously, I wish I wasn't the counter example on this. But like, I really do feel like, and especially because so many startups are just full of ideas, guys. And they're just out of just passion and gumption, at least got it off the ground. But now that they're off the ground, what do we do?
Executors.
And they're looking for somebody to show them, what do we do next? We're off the ground. Oh shit, we're off the ground.
Yeah. Don't crash now.
Yeah.
And a lot of them do. Yeah.
And so, totally. Don't just know your worth and advertise.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, absolutely. And I think, but also it's a humble posture. Here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'm good at. Does that line up with your needs? And you're going to get told no sometimes, but and I think it's a dual strategy, right? Like you should be applying for jobs at the same time if you're looking for something new, but
it doesn't mean just like shit on your resume.
Yeah, for sure. But look for those opportunities, look for those areas where you have some passion and drive behind. And I really think to hiring managers, like they'll see that. Yeah.
And so we were looking at your transition is so compelling because you've got this isn't sort of all right, well, I was at AVTV and then I went into defense contracting. I was working for, BA, one of the big guys. And then I was,
after SIC won the contract, I went to work for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing these 180 shifts all the time. In one respect, it's got to be so exciting. But another, it's got to be so scary.
Well, I think some of that has to do with just your risk tolerance.
Yeah,
it's just you inherently have a certain level of risk tolerance.
Sure.
I actually think most Marines are Marines because they have a fairly high tolerance for risk.
At least on Libo.
Yeah,
I can tell.
Yeah, clearly. Well, we don't go to work drunk. I'm sure that. Yeah. Well, maybe some people do, but that probably has something to do with our level of risk tolerance on Libo.
Sure.
I think some of it comes down to risk tolerance, but I think I heard a wise person say once that your professional path is like a jungle gym, and it's not like when you're on the slide is that inherently different from when you're climbing the ladder or sliding down the rope. It's a jungle gym, and it's okay to move around and to play and to figure out what you're good at. And truth be told, I think perhaps if you're in something very technical like coding, whether you code in JavaScript or Python, maybe there, it might be a little bit less malleable what it is you do, but where you do it is super malleable.
Mm-hmm.
In leadership, especially these leadership positions where you're taking a directorship or a VP level or even a C level, depending on how much time you've spent in your career. Business is business. Decision-making is decision-making. Judgment is judgment.
Right.
And so moving from, cannabis to nonprofit education out of finance where I'm at now, it's not that fundamentally different once you understand the technical differences, but the technical difference is just knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's not experience. It's just knowledge, And so I think, sometimes maybe we shortchange ourselves as to how much flexibility we have in our path before us than maybe we think we do.
Dude, that's so profound. Yeah. I mean, there's a scaffolding for leaders of the military, but admitted bias here. I mean, especially Marine leaders, where we are given so much responsibility at such a young level.
Almost an irresponsible amount of responsibility at the age of 22. I'm like, you are going to give me how many people in vehicles? Yeah.
And you're going to send me where?
Yeah, right.
And all I have to do is call you once a day.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that scaffolding or that foundation is so. I mean, it's irreplaceable.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, University of Penn, whatever that business school is, isn't going to give you that level of
No. I will. We've talked about this. I'm trying to think. At our company now, we've probably got, I would say 15% are veterans, and we have talked about hiring. And I'll tell you, we plan on hiring veterans probably disproportionate to what you would just call the control or the average, because we know how much the U.S. government has given us for free in the education and training of those people.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of experience that a 28-year-old leader coming out of the Marines is likely, it is more than what a 38-year-old leader, unless they were in the top 1% of the performers, it's more than somebody twice their age, with twice as much time and experience has under their belt. And so now imagine how far you can take them from that age when that's the foundation you're building. It's huge. It's you can't argue with it.
Yeah. It's like having it's a staff of Fernando Tatis's on your.
That's right.
I got nothing but this amazing clay to just shape
for sure.
Mold. Yeah. It's so great.
Yeah.
So so going back to these really radical transformations and just the savvy at which you come to the Bible Project, you do recon by fire via email, you get hold of one of the co-founders of the Bible Project, intrigued, he brings you on board. It's one thing, I think, in some respects, to say I am going to dedicate my life to Christ. And it's another thing to say that and then working for this for lack of a better term, Bible startup.
Yeah.
Bible art startup.
Yeah.
And to bring it from a niche audience of a few thousand people a month to what ended up, I think, as you left there, it reached hundreds of million people.
Yeah.
Over dozens of mediums. Yeah. Over a myriad of countries. Yeah. In 20-something languages. Dude, what? That's the only question I have for you is what?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that was what, 5 years?
5 years. Yeah. No, super successful ministry. Like a good Christian would say, and it's not lip service, nothing is successful without the Lord's blessing. God determines what is going to bear fruit and what's not. I just happen to be, but it is interesting that he prepared me beforehand through my experiences, including the Marine Corps, and used me as one of the instruments in order to do that, along with Tim and John and a great staff. And
this is John Collins,
and Tim Mackey, yeah, the founders of the Bible Project, and so we use I should say they now, at the time we used a crowdfunding model. So
talk to us a little bit about that. How is that different than, say, Treuting?
Yeah, so Treuting was a typical B2B company. We do a service, you pay us an invoice. Crowdfunding kind of emerged in the mid 2000s. So there's a company called Patreon, where you can become a patron of an independent music artist or an independent creator of some sort. Kickstarter, famously, I've got this new product I want to launch. If you pre-fund it, you'll get a discount and I'll send you the first version. So, really the internet made it possible now for you to participate in the funding of projects and products that you love.
There's no gatekeepers.
And there's no gatekeeper. Right. It's a platform.
You're not going through a Ticketmaster or whatever, or iTunes or anything like that.
That's right. It's direct to the creator. And so Bible Project sort of embraced this. And it grew from, we'll just say tens of thousands to millions, tens of millions in a course of 5 years, where there are tens of thousands of people donating anywhere between $10 and $100 a month to see more content created. And that was really the model that we sort of perfected while we were there. And it's really cool to see. I mean, you know, the Bible is an inherently confusing book, but whether you believe in the book or not, it exerts influence on your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like politicians who believe in it, neighbors who believe in it, families who believe in it, it exerts influence on your life. Whether you like it or not, it's the most influential book in human history. There's 1 billion adherents to the religion that use that book as the foundation of that religion. It exerts influence on your life. And I think that means that it can be used to exert positive and negative influence. It can be manipulated. And Bible Project is really keen on helping people understand what the book means in its original context so that it's less manipulatable. Like you can't use it in a way that betrays the sort of the true message of the book. And so whether you're a believer or not, I think Bible Approach is super valuable.
There's no agenda. Right?
There's no agenda. They're just trying to help you understand the book.
Right. And it's not like they're going to give you all these videos and at the end of the day, like, vote this way. Or whatever,
no. In fact, they would I think they would shriek away from something like that. In fact, John and Tim have always refused to put music in their videos because music can manipulate emotions, and they don't want the message to be they don't want your emotions to be manipulated in any way that the message of the video or the book would somehow mean something different because they played with you. And I was like, that shows their heart, you know. It's super cool, yeah.
Well, and I don't necessarily want to take this down a theological route per se, but I do want to take it down a redemptive way or like a transitional way. And so we've got, just for our listeners who aren't aware of what the Bible Project is, we've got Dr. Tim Mackey, who came to Christ via a skateboard ministry in Portland.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got John Collins, who had, although he went to seminary, he ended up being a big time marketing guy, and then other things, Robin Hoodish sort of endeavors.
Yeah.
And now we have former 30 under 30 weed Bezos guy.
Former Marine.
Former Marine.
Yeah.
This motley crew.
Yeah. We called ourselves Scrappy.
To say the least. I think that's a great word, man. I mean, so you guys come together for this, and I mean, and even with everything that you had going on, like when you go to the website, there's still like blog posts that still have your name on there. I mean, you're doing so. I mean, your official title is director of.
I wore a number of different titles there, but I built their marketing, technology, and product teams before somebody else took over. So I kind of really just helped lead growth, you know? And sometimes that meant really tactical execution stuff and also 5-year outlook strategy stuff. But, you know, this is actually, because I was studying the culture at Treuting, I didn't encounter any opposition. When I came to Bible Project, I mean, look, this is a Christian ministry. These guys are like Bible nerds.
Yeah,
you know, right. They like have pastored churches. And here's Aeron. I was like a 50 caliber machine gun, like, you know, just
stuck on auto.
Dude, stuck on auto. I'm like, we're gonna crush it, you know, like we're gonna go hard. And I'm like, we're gonna capture territory, you know, for the kingdom in like a way that you've never seen. And it's just like,
just lock the FPF, man. I'm going
for sure. And it's one of those weird things where you just go, hey, your heart is in the right place. Like, you have the right goal in mind, but the methods in which you do it matter. They matter. And so, you know, I don't know what your experience in the Marines were, but my experience with Marine officers especially was like, we eat our own young. You know, like, you mess up, you get destroyed. Not by the staff and COs, but by your captain.
Right,
like, you're a major. Like, you're getting eaten alive. And when you were going to advocate for a particular COA, it was intellectual sparring.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care what your feelings say. Like, it does. I don't care what you think about me.
Yeah.
I will destroy you. But at the same time, you're like, well, because lives depend on it, you know? And so does our pride and our ego, but that's another story. And I really took that into my work, and you know, you would sort of weaponize intellect. Maybe you were faster, a little sharper than anybody else in the room, and you knew it. But what that comes across as is, now, especially if they know you well and they know that your heart's in the right place, you have the right goal, then maybe your tactics are a little rough. If they don't know you, you come across as arrogant.
Sure.
And you come across
overbearing.
Even though you might be right in that moment, it undermines your ability to lead. And so actually Tim Mackey had one of the most transformational talks with me that I've ever had in my life, and basically helped to illuminate this to me. And I remember him talking to me, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I felt almost like emotionally out of control, because I kind of feared that maybe I was experienced that way, but he was telling me I was experienced that way. And all those things might be valuable in the Marine Corps. They may not be the most valuable things to humanity. Mm-hmm. And they certainly made people feel small or hurt in the process of getting the thing done. And what I've learned over the last 5 years is actually a newfound patience in how I work with people, a newfound humility in how I work with people, a gentleness and a softness. Although I might be candid and honest, there's a tact that in the Marine Corps, maybe our bar for tact was very low.
I think it's mentioned, but it's like in this subscript.
For sure.
Tact.
Yeah. Well, we care about tact, which really means like don't speak to your superior in a disparaging way, but everybody else is free game. And so I'd like to think now that all of the initiative, all of the bias for action, clear judgment, clear decision making, demanding clear lines of communication within organizations, I still have all that, but I'm also just more patient and more willing to sacrifice the most optimal path, the fastest way for the human honoring path. And I really learned that there. And that's where I think Marines coming out, especially of the Marines, like, yeah, you're gonna meet some friction with culture, and I think some of that is actually good, and some of that's actually helpful.
That's awesome, and I think it's important for all of our listeners who are in a leadership position to understand that, dude, dignity matters.
It does.
Like, dignity is a big thing, and you can have all of those other things, but dignity has to take priority over just about everything else, or you're not going to get to that one thing that you need because everybody else is just going to check out. And then if you're not treating everybody with a sense of dignity, then as soon as you fall, everyone is going to watch you fall on that sword. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like who wouldn't give, like what you wouldn't give for great staff NCOs when you were a lieutenant, or great captains and a great staff team as a colonel. When you don't, in the Marines, people have orders. In the private market, they can leave. It's a voluntary, right. You're voluntarily tied to these organizations you work with. And if you treat people poorly, they'll leave. Right. And turnover costs you more than any amount of sort of bad decision-making or, not an optimal budgetary decision. Like people's how things get done. And so you really do have to treat people well.
Especially in the world of a startup, right?
Especially in the world of startup, yeah.
They're not falling out of the sky.
No. Yeah, and in startups, you don't pay people as well as Google does, So you really need to provide some intangible benefits. Yeah.
See, it's such an amazing story. So you're at Bible Project and you're getting, again, almost much in the same way with ABTBs, you're starting to see a side of business that you weren't necessarily even aware of, right? And that is international trading. Can you talk to us a little bit about the challenges and then where you saw doing your sort of IPB of the environment? Like, what was it about that was sort of illuminating to you?
Well, yeah, so I know it's not a normal career path. Went from wanting to be a lawyer to the Marines to marijuana to ministry and now to international finance. So while I was at Bible Project, we were doing more and more, I don't want to say like business. It wasn't like we were interacting in an international environment more often. So that might mean that our videos are found internationally and some people decide to donate from, say, the UK or Canada. But we also were translating the videos into a number of languages. And what we found was the best way to do that was to actually hire animation teams in those countries. And those animation teams might have been people that on their day job worked at a news studio or made a children's cartoon or whatever it may be. But we would hire them in country so they could both easily understand the language they're translating into and animating for that language. Of course, those teams were paid in their local currency. So if I'm a US-based company and in this case, Bible Project, and I'm paying a local animation team in Brazil, well, I'm paying them X amount of Brazilian real every month. Well, the Brazilian real would go up or down against the dollar, which means our contract would either be cheaper one month or more expensive another. And you'd like to say, like, well, don't they work out in your benefit like half the time? You're like, it doesn't feel that way, you know? Yeah. And most of all, it disrupts budget. So we're like, well, we'll spend X amount. And you're like, well, actually this year we're going to spend $2.5 million, not $2 million, because the US dollar is falling relative to all these other currencies at that time. And so I had done day trading before. I used to day trade stocks and commodities like oil. I was particularly active in oil and some currencies. And so I knew how markets worked. I'm like, well, these markets exist because businesses needed to hedge. They wanted to hedge their downside risk. And so they use these complex products called derivatives, like options and swaps and futures. And they first started in agricultural markets, farmers trying to hedge the risk of their corn crop, right? But also Kellogg's wanted to hedge the cost of making cornflakes. So they would work with a farmer to buy corn early, and they're like, let's find a mutually beneficial price. They were basically both hedging. We're hedging the downside risk of either corn being too expensive for Kellogg's or corn being too cheap for the farmer to be able to turn a profit. And so this now extends into currencies, and in fact, you can do it in stocks. And I was like, I know this exists. So I went to a couple friends in the finance industry and I said, hey, look, here's the problem we're experiencing. Who should I talk to? And they gave us a recommendation of this organization that does consulting for hedging. And I go and talk to them. And they were super nice, but they were like, dude, you are hundreds of times too small for us to work with. And I was like, well, what's your minimum? And they're like, $1 billion? Maybe. If you're doing $1 billion, we might work with you. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well,
what is that word you're using?
Yeah. I was like, and I was like, well, what do we do? And they're like, you can't do anything. This is the cost of doing business. And I just thought, I was like, that doesn't add up to me. You know, we were doing maybe 2 million in international transactions, which is, you know, at the end of the year, a couple 100,000 might be moving around, which to us is 3 salary positions. But we're moving to 10 million shortly. That's probably what they're doing now. And I was like, this is going to become a meaningful sum. I was teaching robotics with my friend Bob, who now is our chief revenue officer. And he was a VP at Salesforce. And I was like, Bob, I want to go talk to your accounting team. And so he got us an introduction. I fly to San Francisco. I sit down with the international controller at Salesforce. Salesforce, big company, right? They're doing, you know, several $1 billion internationally. And I basically laid out the problem. He goes, oh yeah, we have that problem too. And I was like, well, what do you mean? How do you hedge? And he's like, I don't even want to talk about it. Bank of America charges out the wazoo to do this when the bleeding gets bad enough. And so I talked to him about a potential solution, and he was very bullish on the idea. And that's where I knew I had something. I was like, well, if the small company's having this problem and the big company's having this problem, maybe this is just a problem. And so, yeah, you know, 2018, we started developing in 2019. We, a small team and I started to build a platform that would manage foreign currency risk, aka hedge risk, for really any size business, but we knew we had to do it autonomously, and so we turned to AI.
That's so cool. And so you aren't just catering now to the 0.1%. Like you're saying, if you're doing trading at any sort of significant level, we'll help you out.
Yeah, I think what we're aiming to build is a platform that manages currency risk at scale, but is flexible enough so that it'll work for Salesforce, but it'll also work for the family that immigrated from India that is sending remittances back to their family every month, even as low as $1,000, to where this could beneficially do the same thing that Apple's treasury does, but for them. Apple's treasury is like 400 people. Salesforce's is 5. Most companies, they don't even have one. let alone the family who's just trying to get money back to their, but see, the thing is, fundamentally, this problem's been solved. It just hasn't been solved for 99% of businesses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's so awesome. So you're making it accessible. That's awesome.
Yeah. We're not to overly, I feel like, you remember in the 2010s, everyone's like, disruption. We're going to disrupt. That was like the word. I feel like now the word is democratize.
Yeah.
But we are kind of democratizing access, in a way, not to use an overly used euphemism, but anyhow.
I mean, in a I don't feel like this is an overreach, but I mean, much in the same way, like the Bible Project is making something as difficult and complex as the Bible accessible to everybody. You are making finance and international trading, or at least currency exchange, accessible to people that it's very complex and overwhelming. And I mean, so that's pretty awesome, dude.
Yeah.
And so you look at then this transformation, this evolution, it's so great. I mean, and so what started as working for this independent body within the Marine Corps, Amphibious testing branch, has now led you to this thing where you're doing this really complicated work, but you're still in a leadership position where the lowest person eats first.
Yes, absolutely.
Dude, it's freaking great, man.
Yeah. It's fun, and it's a really cool opportunity for me, personally, professionally, to finally be able to, and we are trying to do this, like, for the first time, I've now been able to integrate the best parts of the Marine Corps with sort of the best lessons I've learned in a ministry context and in sort of private industry. I can now integrate those into what I think is a better leadership paradigm than I personally experienced in either of those realms. How do we bring the best from both worlds? And of course, some of this is contextual. You can't lead young Marines the same way you lead young Gen Zers in a private, like space. But for what we're doing, we're trying to build a bridge between both. And, so we've got really clear lines of communication and command. We've got really high standards. At the same time, we've got a lot of patience and invest a lot into personal development and have a big honor of work-life balance. And so I'm really just as excited about the product we're building and what it can do as I am for the culture we're building and what it can do for individuals and their families.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Well, dude, I appreciate your generosity with your time, and this has been great. I do want to just sort of juxtapose your journey with sort of how Tap and Tamp would sort of over or would project the transitioning Marine, Marine sailor.
It's been a while since I took the Tap and Tamp class, so tell me. So let's juxtapose it up.
I guess just so. And we sat down with Paul Grieve, who you know.
Yeah, I know Paul. I worked for Paul.
Yeah, man.
For 9 months in the HTS company.
And so he also has a very unorthodox transition. But then we look at you. I mean, one of the things, and having gone through Tap and actually I went through Tap and Tamp twice.
Oh, okay.
Once is when I was, I think it was Battalion XO. I did it just to see what my guys were going to be, or guys and gals were going to be going through as they were transitioning out. And then I did it for myself.
Sure.
I would say that it's very templated, right? Because you got thousands of people coming through this thing almost weekly.
Sure.
Especially when you look at DODY.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to set up as many people as we can for success as often as we can.
Yeah.
Not to say that those are lessons learned or bad, or it's not something you should take it. But what are your thoughts? Are they spot on when you go through Tap and Tamp, or is there something more nuanced, maybe, especially as you look at the nuances of your transitions and your many transitions? That are there sort of overarching themes that, like, hey, these are the things that you expect, and this is sort of the way forward, or is it really like, to use your term, like you need to hedge? I don't know. I don't. This isn't a fully formed question. This guy.
No, I think I understand. I mean, I would say the Marine Corps and the armed forces in general are doing what they are, legislatively obligated to do. And legislation is kind of about the most utilitarian approach in many cases. Yeah. So look, if Tap and Tamp is, successful for 70% of people, well, maybe that's the best we can get with the resources we've been provided at the scale at which they have to do it.
Right.
And so I think, as you're entering Tap and Tamp, is this going to work for me? Does this make sense? I mean, well, then great, utilize that. I think what I would encourage people to do, and I'll get to like what are the things that I experience that maybe are consistent across all those transitions? I'll get to that. But for those that are going through Tap and Tamp, or looking to in the next few years, find a mentor. Find a mentor.
That's nice.
Find a mentor. And people will be more than willing to be generous with their time. Go on LinkedIn. Get your resume and your LinkedIn account kind of squared away, and look for former veterans that are working at Amazon. Look for former veterans that are working at Google or have done something else, and reach out to them. Get their advice. Hey, I'm interested in going to software. Find a Marine in software, right? Yeah. And so get a mentor. That's number one. That's where you're not going to get personalized. You're not going to get a personalized, nuanced perspective on what you could do and where you could fit from Tap and Tamp. It's just not. It's not their mandate.
Yeah. And, but I will say, well, at least the last time I went through, and granted, this was almost 4 years now, but networking was a huge thing that they totally
great
put the drum on.
There you go. Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, because that's how relationships is how you get jobs, right? It's not about what you know, but who you know, which is partially true. And so I think that's where but don't approach it as I need a network so I can get a job. I need to find someone who can give me authentic advice. Your relationship with that person actually might give them back as much as you do, believe it or not. Yeah. Marines love helping Marines. Yeah. It's what we do, Right. And so you might be blessing that mentor with the opportunity to speak into the life of a young Marine, which will give them great joy. And so start with that perspective. If it leads to a job, great, but it might just lead you to good advice that leads to a job. As far as the things that I experienced consistent across all those transitions, I think I have one encouragement and one exhortation. And my encouragement would be that you likely know more than what you think you know. Yeah. What you've learned, your leadership, your experience,
all the schools
I mean, just and how to work with people of very diverse backgrounds. Mm-hmm. You know more than you think you know, and you have more leadership experience than probably almost any one of your peers.
Yeah, because you've literally lived with these people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, how many people do you go to work with that you live with for 6 months on a boat? Yeah. And so that's my encouragement is just trust and have confidence that you have an edge in many cases. My exhortation is, don't act like it, and don't take that for granted, because you also don't know shit. You are an Amtracker or a grunt or comms or supply battalion. Right. You're applying for a job in the user experience department at Google. You don't know anything about that. And you don't know culture outside of your one microcosm. Yeah. Right. Sure. So enter it with hey, I've got confidence in what I do know, but I also am humble in what I don't know. So listen first, listen twice before you speak, and be willing to maybe go, oh, maybe the way I've done things or how I was taught may actually not be the best way. The Marine Corps is great, but as many things as it teaches that are awesome, it probably also teaches some bad habits. And so be willing to lay those down when something new presents itself as maybe being more beneficial.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah, I mean, that culture aspect, it's so hard because it's full immersion.
Yeah, it really is.
And so to say that it's a very niche culture.
It is.
It's hard to come to grips with. Yeah. Especially, like I said, because it is so full. But I really do feel like Tap and Tamp are so critical to a successful transition, but especially when looking at your case, there's no accounting for passion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it should not be discounted that, I think what is the old axiom? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And so I think that don't allow the majority report to keep you out of
for sure
thing that
yeah.
I'm a little scared to try this. dude, give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Give
Yeah,
it a shot.
absolutely. Yeah, I actually think
Reach out, like, sort of deduce what somebody's email might be and shoot them an email with their quality.
Yeah.
See what happens, because you might end up working for a really
Start a
amazing
company, go raise a couple $1 million. You might surprise yourself, you know?
Yeah.
We I think Marines are pretty industrious. Like, I don't know what the stat is anymore, but I remember years ago, the Marines received about 4 to 5% of the Department of Defense's budget, and we were responsible for over 33% of combat operations.
Yeah.
Marines by nature are industrious. We figure out how to do more with less, and that's entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You know, it's figuring out a way when there isn't one.
Yeah. I mean, practically every real world op is a startup.
That's true. Oh man. Yeah, that's right. That's good.
It's just you get to shoot your competitors.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Some people do, but I wouldn't recommend it.
No, it's not. It's not the best way to do it.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, you have a limited clientele. Well, dude, Aeron, man, this has been so great. Like I said, I've just been geeking out all day. This has been so.
This is fun. Thanks for having me. It was great.
All right, so where can we find you?
Hey, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. I think if you search for Aeron Sullivan, Aeron, you'll probably find me. You can also go to aeronsullivan.com and you can get a link to my LinkedIn there. It's not infrequent. I get a message from a fellow Marine, either looking for some business advice or just trying to connect. So yeah, feel free to connect with me.
And then Pangea is your current endeavor. We got BibleProject.com.
BibleProject.com, great resource for those that are either Christian and read the scriptures because it's part of your lifestyle, or for those that are interested in learning more. I think BibleProject.com is a great resource. I would argue one of the best resources out there on the Bible for those interested. Check that out. Treuting is no more. They recapitalized as another corporation. So, I don't know if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah. And then, so Pangea, where can we find Pangea?
So Pangea is, we're in a private sort of testing stage. We launch in September with a small clientele. We'll be kind of fully commercial next year. But if you're interested in learning more, you can go to pangea.io.
All right. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your hospitality, your generosity with your time, dude. This has been awesome.
Awesome. Thanks.
Have a good one, guys.
Yeah.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. I am Nick Wilson. That is Major Vic Ruble, U.S. Marine Corps retired. We have also heard the voices of or contributions from William Treuting or Nancy Lichtman, editors of Gazette and Leatherneck magazines respectively. Opinions expressed in Scuttlebutt are just that, opinions, and do not represent any official stance of the MCA.